I'll walk you through the conditionals, and then we'll look at this exercise as we go along. Yeah? Okay. Now you must have seen that all of these sentences start with if, right? Yeah. All of them start with if. And you already know from syntax, an if clause is an adverbial clause of condition. So if sentences are what we call conditionals or conditional sentences. And a conditional sentence always contains two clauses, an if clause and a result clause. So the if clause contains a condition, and the result clause, obviously the result or the outcome. If people steal from their shop, condition, if they do that, the store detectives always catch them. That's the outcome. If people steal from their shop, the store detectives always catch them. So there's two clauses in each conditional sentence. And what I ask you to do is look at these two clauses and identify the tenses. We'll look at that. So a conditional sentence has two clauses, an if clause and a result clause. Yeah? Okay. So, there are different kinds of conditionals which describe different kinds of possibilities and different kinds of outcomes. These conditionals have also have different forms. It's important for you to know which form you should use for which conditional. So I asked you to put these sentences into different boxes because I wanted you to think about what's the idea behind conditional sentences. Apparently there's a structure. What kind of structure can we find? Well, here's the first kind of conditional which goes into the first box. The outcome is very probable. A scientific fact or just a fact. And this is what we call the zero conditional. Zero conditional. Don't ask me why it's called zero. I can't tell you. We call it the zero conditional. This is a conditional sentence which has a present tense in the if clause and a present tense in the result clause. And the present tenses will usually be present simples. So here are three examples. The three sentences which should have been put in this box. If you use a very hot iron on nylon, it melts. Use and melts are both in the present simple. Now, this is a scientific fact, right? This is always true. Nylon melts when you put a hot iron on it. There's no way we can change that. Yeah. This is the first of the four boxes. Yeah. The outcome is very probable. Yeah. The second sentence: if I use dairy products, I get red spots on my skin. Use and get are both in the present simple, and also this is a plain fact. This is what always happens. If I use dairy products, I get red spots on my skin. There's no way I can change that unless I take some sort of medicine, maybe. But this is maybe not scientific, but it's a fact. And the third one: if you don't look after tomato plants, they die very quickly. This is a known fact. We all know this. You have to look after tomato plants, otherwise they die very quickly. Apart from the tomato plants in my garden. So this is not a scientific fact, but it is something that's always true, generally. if you don't look after tomato plants, don't look is in the present simple, and die is also in the present simple. You should remember, and you probably do, that the present simple by itself describes facts, things which are generally true. Right? So it's not surprising that this kind of conditional describes the very same thing. Yeah? So the zero conditional is an easy conditional to form. Both clauses contain the present simple. If this, then that. If you use a hot iron on an island, it melts. Yeah? That's a zero conditional. Any questions about the zero conditional? Zero questions. Zero conditional. Let's move on then to the first conditional. And as the numbers increase of the conditionals, so the likelihood of something happening decreases. The first conditional doesn't describe a scientific fact, a general truth. It describes a possibility, something that could happen in the future. For example, if the Spanish team continues to do so well, continue should have been underlined. They will win the World Cup. If the Spanish team continues to do so well, they'll win the World Cup. This is something which is a possibility, a future possibility. This might happen, it might not happen, but it's likely, it's possible, quite possible that this is going to happen. In the first clause, the if clause, we use the present simple. If the Spanish team continues to do so well. The result clause contains a future form, and usually this is will. Usually. Could also be going to, but usually it's will. If the Spanish team continues to do so well, they'll win the World Cup. If the museum charges present simples for entry, a lot of people won't be able to visit it. And if the weather is, present simple should be underlined, if the weather is good tomorrow, we will have a picnic. Now, for each of these sentences, we use will. And you remember from our lecture on future with will is used for predictions based on general knowledge or based on opinion. Well, each of these are also predictions based on opinion. But they're also a conditional sentence. A first conditional. So you can group conditionals according to how possible, how likely something is going to happen. You can also group them in terms of form. Present simple, or present simple and future. Which is actually an easier way to group these sentences, to group the conditionals. If you want to know how to form a first conditional, you don't need to think about how likely something is that you're going to say. You can just think about what tenses do I need to use. So, present simple in the if clause, future with will, generally in the result clause. And then you have a possibility, something which will possibly happen in the future. Any questions about the first conditional? No questions. Let's move on to the second conditional. And this describes a situation which is not possible, but unlikely. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely. Why? Because the present situation is different. For example, if we were poor, we wouldn't be able to live here. If we were poor, we wouldn't be able to live here. We wouldn't be able to live here is not something which is going to happen, you hope, because you're rich. right? So the result clause describes a situation where you're no longer able to live in this large house, for example. You hope this is not going to happen, and it's not likely to happen because you're very rich. But something might happen where you lose all your money, and you might still become poor. It's unlikely, but not impossible. It's unlikely because you're very rich, but it's not impossible. So this is something which is not so possible as with the first conditional, but it's still a possibility, but not so strong. It's what we call unlikely, but not impossible. And the second conditional doesn't start with a past or the present tense, but with a past tense, a past simple. And this could also be other past tenses, which I forgot to put in the slide. Could also be other past tenses, but usually it's a past simple. If we were poor, we wouldn't be able to live here. Were is a past simple. Tim?
Couldn't you rephrase the first sentence to say, if we were poor, we wouldn't be living here?
Yes, you could. And then it would still be a first condition.
Okay.
Yeah, because you still use would. Yeah.
So would here is like the essential part.
Would, yeah. Wouldn't be living.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still would plus infinitive. Yeah. And then the result clause contains a form of would. Contains would. Or another modal. It could also be could, for example. As with the second one, plus infinitive. So if we were poor, we wouldn't be able to live here. That's would plus infinitive. If you weren't ill, you could come with us. So this one's not would, but could. It's also possible for the second condition. So the second one is also a situation which is unlikely, but still possible. If you weren't ill, you could come with us. Now it's not likely you're going to come with us. It's unlikely you're going to come with us because you're ill. But some sort of miraculous improvement might happen, and you suddenly feel better and you come in with us. Yeah?
Why isn't it you could have come with us?
I'll show you. That's a third conditional. What you're saying is actually a mixed conditional. But I'll explain that later on. Yeah? If you were ill, you couldn't come with us. This is a future situation which is not likely, but still possible. If my eyesight was better, I wouldn't need to wear these glasses. I wouldn't need to wear these glasses is something that you would like to happen, but it's not likely because your eyesight is poor. But it could still improve. Yeah.
But why isn't that the last one from the outcome is impossible?
Because
the eyesight can't magically get better.
Well, people's eyesight does get better sometimes. Yeah, when you wear glasses, your eyesight can get better. You can even train your eyes that your eyesight becomes slightly better, or you can have an operation. But the thing with the last box, it's the third conditional, which I'll explain after this. The thing with the last box, for this I meant the kind of sentence that I gave as an example. If the bus hadn't been so slow, I would have been there on time. This is something that describes a past situation, which is impossible to change anymore because it already happened in the past. Yeah?
Isn't that also the case with if you weren't ill?
If you weren't ill, no. This means, it's a good question. If you weren't ill doesn't mean if you weren't ill yesterday, but now. So even though it's a past tense in the if clause, it still describes a present situation. It's funny, yeah? It's like when you say, if I were you. You don't mean yesterday, but now. Yeah, but you use a past tense in technical terms, this is called subjunctive, where you express a wish or a possibility. It's the same in Dutch. Als ik jou was. Ja. Ik wou dat ik jou was. It's a past tense, but it describes a present wish. Yeah? If you weren't ill. If only you weren't ill. Yeah.
If I understand it correctly, we should look more.
Guys, I've got the feeling I'm losing you. Thank you. Yeah?
If I understood you correctly, we should look at the sentences more from a perspective of, is it possible what is said or not?
That's what they mean. How possible is it? But if you want to group them, the easiest way to do that is look at the tense forms. Yeah. Okay, let's look at the third conditional. That's the last one. And this is the one where something happened in the past which you wish had been different. But of course, we can't change the past. For example, you came late. Or, I made a mistake in the, I see now. So let me just change this. This is a mixed conditional and this is not a third conditional.
I wouldn't have been.
Okay. The third conditional describes a past situation. You came late and you wish now that it had been different, but you can't change the past. Unfortunately. You were in trouble in the past and you wish now it had been different, but you can't change it anymore. That's the third conditional, an unchangeable situation because that already happened in the past. This is the conditional with a past perfect in the if clause, If the bus hadn't been so slow, past perfect, hadn't been, and would or other modal plus present perfect in the result clause. I would have been there on time. If the bus hadn't been so slow, I would have been there in time. If I hadn't decided to come with you, I wouldn't have been in trouble. This is an action in the past which led to another action in the past, and you can't change that anymore now. In terms of form, here we have a past perfect in the if clause and the would plus present perfect in the result clause. And this answers your question about, what was it again? Sorry. You could have come with us. In the third conditional, this would be, your question was, can it be, if you weren't ill, you could have come with us? Yeah. That's a mixed conditional, which I'll explain after this. Strictly speaking, we would have to say, if you hadn't been ill, you could have come with us. That's a third conditional.
Okay.
Yeah, that's hadn't been ill, past perfect. You could have come with us, present perfect. Yeah. So we have a first conditional. Present simple, present simple. Scientific fact. First conditional, present simple, and a future tense. A possibility. Second conditional, past simple, and would plus infinitive. Unlikely, but still possible. And third conditional, past perfect, and would plus present perfect. Past situation which we can't change anymore. I'll give you an overview. 0 first, second, and third. If I drink coffee at night, I don't sleep well. A fact. Which you can't help, you can't change. If I drink coffee tonight, I won't sleep well. This is a possibility. If I drank coffee tonight, I wouldn't sleep well. And if I drank coffee last night, I wouldn't have slept well. These are the 4 conditionals. And you can see the different tenses. Drink, don't sleep. Drink, won't sleep. Drank, wouldn't sleep. Had drunk, wouldn't have slept. Now, don't be misled by what I put in the handout, the boxes. This is sort of general guidelines by which we can group the conditionals, but they don't always work so well. Yeah. All you need to understand is that the meaning changes when you say I drink coffee at night, I don't sleep well, and when you say if I drink coffee tonight, I won't sleep well. There's a change in meaning there. And that's important to realise. And whether we call that general truth or possibility or something else doesn't really matter. As long as you're aware that the meaning changes when you change the form of the conditional. For the exam, you need to know not so much this, whether it's possible or not. You don't need to know that for the exam. What you need to know for the exam is this. If the first one if the second clause, the result clause, has will in it, then the first one has to be a present simple. Yeah. If the if clause contains the past simple, if I drank coffee tonight, then you know the result clause needs to contain would or could. Yeah? So on the exam, the kind of question you will get is finish the conditionals. So a sentence could be, if I drank coffee tonight, I ... and then sleep between brackets well. And then you need to know, I need to use wouldn't sleep, because the first one is a past simple.
So you don't really have to be able to make the
No, you don't need to.
0 first.
You need to be able to say it's 0 first, second, or third. You need to be able to say that, but you can decide that on the basis of the form. Yeah. You don't need to say that on the basis of the meaning. Yeah. So I talked about the meaning just to help you get the idea of why do we use these different conditions. But all you need to be able to see is the different forms and the fact that the meaning changes.
But they will say, like the first two, they are the same as the if clause.
Yeah.
But they will say like it's a 0 conditional, so you fill in the last one.
So I would say, for this one, if this would be in the test, it would be if I ... drink between brackets coffee at night, I don't sleep well. And then you know, it's a present simple in the result clause, so there needs to be a present simple in the if clause.
The main clause will come, not the if clause.
It depends. It could be both. But it'll be clear to you, there will only be one possibility. Yeah? There's alternatives to if, unless, for example, or when. You should study those in your own time. On page 162. Unless you buy me some food, I won't have anything to eat tonight. That's also a conditional sentence without if. I'm not going to cover that today. I didn't sleep well, I get that. Let's start saying that sort of thing. What we also don't cover, and which is also not going to be on the test, but it's good to know, is the mixed conditional. And if you're interested, have a look at that in your own time. It's the last chapter in the unit on conditionals. You could also change them round. You can say, if I drank coffee last night, I wouldn't sleep well, for example. That's what we call a mixed conditional. But you need to study that, you can study that in your own time. You don't need to know that for the test, because that will only lead to confusion for now. And that's something for the future to study. But if you're interested, have a look at the last chapter in the unit on mixed conditionals. There is one warning. Banana skins lying around. No, the warning is this. I'm not sure whether you noticed it, but in all the conditional sentences, in none of these sentences, we said we use will in the if clause. And this is a very, very common mistake. For example, if we would be poor, we wouldn't be able to live here. Wrong. You can't say if we would be poor, you have to say if we were poor. Yeah? If the weather will be good tomorrow, no. If the weather is good tomorrow. No will after if, and no would after if. Yeah? And I'm saying almost never, because there's always exceptions. And I also have to tell you, this is a strict rule in English, but as all grammar rules, this is changing. So you will hear people say if I will, but it's not officially correct. Yeah? So it's the same with Dutch, with the things which are not officially correct. For example, the difference between hen and hun. Ik geef hun een boek in plaats van ik geef hen een boek. Ik geef het boek aan hen en ik geef hun een boek. But hardly anyone still sticks to that rule. So it's the same with will and would in English. People do stick to the rule, but because it's the official rule. But you can hear people use will and would now and again. So it's not would you say, cut in stone. But if you use will after if on the test, we'll mark it wrong. Yeah? Be very careful here. What's the time? Right. I'd like to have a break, and then I'll do some practice with this.
Yes.